1290 AD, 5184 AM. An earthquake at the Gulf of Chihli, China, killed about 100,000 people. In England, King Edward of the Plantagenet dynasty was troubled by the fact that by this time the Jewish companies had bankrupted the English. He was under pressure by the people who accused the Jews of exploitative financial practices related to their dominance in the banking business. In an attempt to demonise King Edward, historian James Mackay wrote that Edward was also a descendant of the Angevins, who, quote, had a long reputation for evil-doing, pagan practices and witchcraft. They were said to have originated with the Breton bandit named Tortulf the Forester, unquote. The Angevins were known for violent tempers and a propensity to great cruelty, but these attributes were never given to Edward until he expelled the Jews. Like the Danes, Edward at this time also instituted a House of Lords known in London as Parliament, as well as many legal reforms. In this year of 1290, his wife Eleanor of Castile died. By this time, Edward had already subdued Wales and now had his eyes on Scotland. King Edward I expelled the Jews from England, some 16,000 men, women and children, some with violence. Unfortunately, Edward saw that once the Jewish financial stranglehold takes over, there is never a peaceful resolution. Other European monarchs saw this and also expelled the Jews from their kingdoms. As history is rewritten over and over again by authors, submitting their research to Jewish editors in the Jewish publishing houses of Europe and America since the 1940s, the reasons that the European monarchs expelled the Jews so many hundreds of times over a 15th century period is altered. We are told today that anti-Semitism was the reason, while all along it was for financial reasons. The Edict of Expulsion was enacted on November the 1st, the ancient Day of the Dead, and many of these Jews would relocate to Spain, where exactly 202 years later, on the exact same day, the Spanish crown would again expel the Jews in 1492 AD, on the same day Christopher Columbus set sail for the New World. Lastly, Queen Margaret of Scotland died from a sudden illness, which was exactly what King Edward I of England had hoped for her demise, poisoning perhaps, ended the royal Scottish dynasty. This year was 54 Jubilees after 1411 BC, when the Israelites defeated the Amorites and took their lands, Argob and Bashan. This was the 5184th year of the Annus Mundi chronology, or 864 times 6 years, since humankind was cursed and banished in 3895 BC. 1. Natural disasters. 2. March of the Titans. 3. William Wallace. 6. Synagogue of Satan. 1291 AD, 5185 AM. William Wallace, of Danish-Scotch ancestry, stood 6 feet 7 inches tall, a giant of a man. William, known to posterity as Braveheart, began a guerrilla campaign against English occupation forces in Scotland. His daring acts and campaigns endeared him to the people, and he is the greatest of all heroes in Scottish memory. Wallace was already famous before he fought and defeated the infamous pirate Red Rover. Also in May, Arab armies destroyed the Christian city of Acre, led by the Egyptian Sultan Khalil al-Ashraf. The surviving Christians and the Knights of the Templar Order were holed up in the Great Sea Tower. The Sultan promised to let all the Christians and Knights go free if they abandoned the tower, which was an almost impregnable fortress. This was agreed to, and the Christians allowed Arab soldiers inside, but the Muslims immediately began harassing and abusing the Christian women, prompting the Templars to retaliate, slaughtering them. The Sultan viewed this development as intolerable and had the castle undermined by sappers, and it partially collapsed, and the Christians were all killed. 1. William Wallace. 2. The Jesus Papers. 1293 AD, 5187 AM. An earthquake in Kamakura, Japan, killed about 20,000 people. Roger Bacon died. 1294 AD, 5188 AM. Kublai Khan died, leaving no successor to the Mongol Empire. 1. Wars that changed the world. 1296 AD, 5190 AM. In March, war broke out between England and Scotland. King Edward I of England attacked Berwick, Scotland's largest city, which had been enjoying a time of great prosperity in maritime trade with the Scandinavian countries. The English killed between 17 and 20,000, including women and children. The raping, murders, looting and burning lasted 3 days. Matthew of Westminster claims that 60,000 people perished, Christian English slaughtering Christian Scottish. King Edward is said to have seen a woman giving birth as she was hacked to death by a crazed soldier. Edward removed Lia Fale, the stone of destiny, from Scotland to England, and set it into the coronation chair at Westminster Abbey. The stone was said to have been brought to ancient Ireland by a prophet and princess of Judah and stayed in Ireland for 1080 years until 503 AD. In 504 AD, it was set in place in Scotland exactly 792 years before Edward removed it to England in this year. Some hold that Edward was duped, that the real stone was replaced with another. The original Lia Fale was said to be covered in inscriptions. This year was 2016 years, 1008 plus 1008, after the last of the 10 tribes of Israel were deported by Assyria in 721 BC. 1. William Wallace. 2. Today, Tomorrow and the Great Beyond. 3. Saxons, Vikings and Celts.